everyone, Beth Olson here from the Office of Environmental Health and Safety. We are doing our cooling tower startup and safety training a little differently this year, so thank you so much for being so flexible and watching this training remotely. We are still planning to switch over to cooling as needed, so we want to make sure that we are ready to start our towers when we need them. Including our contact block here, just a reminder of who to contact should you guys have any questions about cooling tower startup or shoulder season operation or just your cooling tower in general. Associate directors, PPE and chemical inventory is Larry at the stock room. Eldon Water, this email is super important to point out to you guys that if you have any questions or you need to email Eldon Water, you email this wsuwatersafety@eldonwater.com. That goes to several people at Eldon Water who can immediately address your questions or concerns that you might have for the cooling tower. Then we have Peter Miller with Eldon Water, Du Bois Chemicals, and Wayne State's Office of Environmental Health and Safety. That's us. So this is here just to remind everybody what we discovered that first summer when we first found out we had Legionella here on campus in higher quantities than safe. Just a reminder that when we get to about the 1 part per million total chlorine, we saw a significant decrease in the amount of Legionella in our cooling towers. So just a reminder for our cooling tower startup, our mechanical cleaning is going to happen from our contractor before we start our startup procedure for the cooling tower. You want to make sure that that cleaning is done. We are starting this week, and we are starting with the housing buildings, moving to Med Campus, and then after that moving on to the rest of campus that has later startup dates. Don't forget we need an inspection by the building engineer when the cleaning is complete, and my office. This doesn't have to be done together to eliminate face-to-face interaction. I can talk to you on the phone or over email about your satisfaction with the cleaning, and then I will come on my own and take a look at the towers to make sure that it meets the water safety team's standards for cleaning. We do our disinfection according to our startup guide and checklist, which I'll cover here in a second, and then don't forget to turn that checklist back into your associate director. So this is our startup guide and checklist. It looks just like the one we did last year. You want to put your building name, you initial that the towers were cleaned, and you actually record the date that that happened, and then you want to perform a secondary cleaning if you find that the tower has gotten dirty again since the vendor left the tower, and you can just get it cleaned up again, sweep it out, vacuum, whatever you need to make sure that you are comfortable with its cleanliness before you fill the tower. You want to visually inspect all your areas, make sure everything looks good. We're asking you again to record your makeup meter prior to filling, and then fill it, and then record your makeup meter after you fill. This gives us a total system volume to make sure that we are consistently dosing these towers at the right amount. If you have any concerns about your makeup meter or how to access it, let myself or Peter Miller know. You want to calculate the system volume, so the difference between number 2 and number 4. And then you can initiate your pumps for circulation with your makeup valves open, but don't forget to leave your fan off. It's very important that we don't run our fan until we are sure that we have enough chemical in our cooling tower to not get anybody sick. We want to ensure that the water circulates through all of our piping, pumps, and heat exchangers. So you want to open everything up that you can. You might want to consider alternating different pumps if you have to do that to make sure that you're able to circulate water through the entire system. And then where possible, close outdoor air intake vents within 100 feet of the cooling tower. You want to reduce any chemical odor that might be drawn into the building. So these are our disinfection steps, just like last year. I've left the Stabrum 909 and AquaClean ODP trade names here for you because that's what everybody has at their tower to start up. We will be transitioning to the new DuBois chemical trade names later. So everybody should have their Stabrum and AquaClean still at their controller. If you don't, and you need to get that Trekside 323, which is the Stabrum, or the CW878L, which is that biodispersant, you would just write those settings here. So this is where you write your bromine setting, this is where you write your biodispersant setting on those pumps, and then you want to turn off your treatment controller. You're going to raise those pumps to max setting, and you're going to pump for 15 minutes per 1,000 gallons, and you record the duration there. Then you're going to measure your total halogen using test strips. You want to make sure that you are using the test strips so that you can actually measure if the total halogen level is at least 10 parts per million. Those Hach color wheels will not go that high, so it's important to make sure that you have a couple of these test strips from your associate director if you don't have any already on site when you are performing the startup procedure. If you get less than 10 parts per million, you're just going to repeat that max setting for 15 minutes per 1,000 gallons and remeasure. And once you get up past 10 parts per million, you want to allow that chemical to circulate throughout the entire system, so all your pumps, all your heat exchangers, for 24 hours. And then you just indicate the date that you disinfected your tower. Finally, after that disinfection, you need to flush your system, so you're going to flush the system online at 15 gallons per minute for 2 hours per 1,000 gallons. You turn back on your water treatment controller, and you want to return that Stabrum 909 and AquaClean pumps to their original settings where they were when you turned them on. You're going to establish your normal water quality parameters, and you want to confirm that your total halogen levels are between 1 and 2 parts per million, and record that here. So, big part of our program is documentation. We want to make sure that you are recording it in your online logbook, that Aqua Analytics logbook. Don't forget to indicate your system volume in that comment section, and then you want to make sure that you prevent the equipment from sitting idle for long periods of time. That's where our shoulder season operation comes in handy. And don't forget to provide a copy of this completed document to your associate director, and I recommend that you keep a copy for yourself as well, just in case. So like I said, we have that wet layup or shoulder season where we want to prevent the equipment from sitting idle, and we want to prevent water age, basically. So you want to verify that your biocide feed pumps are primed. You can place them in hand via the controller if necessary to make sure that they're primed. And we want to circulate water for at least 1 hour every day, and this ensures that the treated water circulates throughout the entire system and picks up that chemical. And you want to make sure that you are circulating it through all of your piping, heat exchangers, operational dead legs, pumps, and if you have a 3-way divert valve, you want to make sure that you are including both legs of that. So, this daily circulation, we want to confirm biocide is at least 1 part per million every day. This is our standard program. Respond to low measurements per that wet layup reference guide, and we want to record that biocide concentration daily in our online logbook, just like last year. So this is that logbook entry. As a reminder, something new that we added last fall was this Notify Representative link. When you click that, it will open up a comment box for you to send any questions or comments to Eldon Water. It also goes to select individuals on the water safety team. Just a reminder of the cooling tower programs we have on campus. Peter covered them earlier in the training. Like I mentioned, we have that daily halogen measurement and recording it in our online logbook. And we are responding to low measurements per the cooling tower quick reference guide that's posted at each controller. Each controller will have a quick reference guide that matches the program it is running. Whether that's the normal program, the elevated program, or the chlorine program will depend on which building it is. So in an effort to help quickly reference which buildings are running which program, we created a summary document. It's one page, includes our standard program with its goal ranges, elevated program with its goal ranges, and chlorine program with its goal ranges. Then for each program we list the function and the chemical name, and we also list which buildings by building number are included in each program. So this is something to keep handy and has been distributed for you with all of your cooling tower startup documentation. So next we're just going to briefly cover that wet layup reference guide for the shoulder seasons that we have here on campus until we get up and running constantly. The first part of the document just covers what the wet layup or shoulder season is, and the rest of the document will walk you through operation during this time. So we want to make sure that we are circulating through our system every day and we are measuring our biocide for our tower. We want to circulate water through the entire system with our fans off for at least 1 hour per day. Ensure that treated water circulates through all of our piping, including both legs of three-way divert valves if you have it, and operational dead legs pumps, heat exchangers, basins for at least several minutes. Those operational dead legs are parts of your system that are able to receive circulation but might not receive circulation unless you indicate that the circulation needs to go there. So after the 1 hour circulation, that's when you measure your biocide to verify minimum biocide for your tower. If the biocide is less than the minimum total chlorine for your system, whether you're on that standard program, elevated program, or chlorine program, you want to add Trexide by placing the pump in hand mode via the controller. Then you want to measure it again. Now if you are operating on one of those 7 sites that have chlorine, you actually don't adjust your pumps at all. You want to email Eldon Water, and Eldon Water will make adjustments to your biocide if it is not high enough. You don't want to actually adjust your chlorine pump at all at those towers that have both chlorine and bromine. If you're unable to reach the minimum, whether it's 1 or 2 parts per million, depending on which program you're running, after 3 circulation attempts, you want to keep the fans off and contact Eldon Water, and you want to make sure you document that in your online logbook. And place the Trexide pump in hand via the controller. Placing it in hand doses a predetermined amount of bromine, and then the controller automatically returns that pump to auto mode after that amount is dispensed. Just a reminder that every Monday and Thursday that shock dose of isothiazolone is added to the system. It is automatically initiated by the controller if the tower is online. If the tower is in wet layup and you haven't initiated that circulation yet on a Monday or Thursday morning, the isothiazolone will then dose once it detects flow through the controller. To actually restart your system after a wet layup longer than 24 hours, you want to circulate through the open loop systems with the fan off for at least 1 hour. You want to ensure that your water circulates through everything, just like in wet layup. You want to verify that your pumps are primed, and you want to confirm the biocide concentration is at least the minimum total chlorine before you start your fans. This is huge. We want to make sure we have biocide in our water, in our basin, before we turn that fan on and potentially expose a bunch of people to elevated amounts of Legionella. And don't forget to record that concentration in your online logbook. Okay, so this is the Cooling Tower Quick Reference Guide. This example that I've provided is for our standard program that we have, which is the majority of our towers. I've included current names of chemicals that we have as well as future names of the chemicals. Once we completely transition over to Du Bois chemical names, then we will update the quick reference guide. So this should be posted at each controller that is running the standard program. We cover the hazard symbols and statements for each chemical. The Stabrum includes this DEQ environmental hazard pictogram, but the Trexide actually does not, so that would be updated later. And don't forget your PPE, your chemically resistant gloves, your face shield goggles, and your apron. So this is our second half of that quick reference guide. It's just a reminder that our bromine is continuous feed. We want to test it every day using our hot color disc. Again, this is our standard program, so the target concentration range is 1 to 2 parts per million. We tell you what it corresponds to it in bromine, and any corrective actions that you may need to complete depending on what measurement you get that day. So if you get less than 1 part per million at a standard program tower, you're going to check your pump and chemicals and you increase your TrekSide by 10%. Don't forget to email your associate director and Eldon Water, and you want to make sure you also record it in your online logbook. Document, document, document. If it's high, if it's greater than 2, you reduce your pump. Same thing, email associate director, Eldon Water, and document it in the online logbook. As a reminder, there is the contact block here, should you need to quickly reference somebody's contact information. And that we are shock dosing our towers with the Promax Gax or isothiazolone every Monday and Thursday. This is also a handy place to write your system volume for your cooling tower system. And as a reminder, we have these status depending on what your system looks like. It is either drained, standby, or online. And this is just to keep our entries on the online logbook consistent. And because we felt like everyone needed one more document for reference, we created a checklist or inspection procedure for the cooling towers here on campus. And what that looks like is just some recommendations on how frequently we need to check these different general cooling tower condition items. If you don't know, this is a good resource for you to use to figure out what you should be doing at startup, daily, monthly, and at shutdown. It's not an exhaustive list, but it was compiled based on the recommendations of all of the cooling tower manufacturers. Then we have mechanical equipment system items that need to be checked at startup, monthly, quarterly, annually, and at shutdown. And some footnotes that correspond to different little numbers up there for your reference. This document also is distributed with all of your cooling tower startup documentation. So we're going to move into our OSHA HAZCOM and Right to Know standard. This is the safety portion of startup training. Want to make sure that you're aware of our written hazard communication program available online, or I could distribute to you electronically if you need. Our safety data sheets, which is really important and has been distributed electronically with this training link, as well as very important, especially with our transition from Eldon chemicals to DuBois chemicals, is the container labeling. We want to make sure that we are paying attention to the containers and that they are remaining correctly labeled while we go through this transition. So like I said, labels, super important. Want to make sure the product identification is there, so the name of the product. You shouldn't have any spray bottles in your cooling tower systems, but we want to make sure everything must be labeled. And of course our supplier identification, DuBois Chemical, should also be included on the label. It's important not to remove or deface any labels that come on these containers. So labels should look something like this. We have symbols called pictograms, which we'll go over in a few minutes, signal words, hazard statements, precautionary statements, product identification, and then the supplier and manufacturer identification. We have all those things included here on this sample label. We have our pictograms, signal word, hazard statement, and precautionary statements. So we're just going to cover our 8 pictograms that are regulated by MIOSHA. We have health hazards and physical hazards that are regulated by MIOSHA, and then we have the environmental hazards, which are regulated by DEQ. We saw this symbol earlier for that bromine Sta-Brom 909 product. So, skull and crossbones, big deal, right? Acute toxicity, super severe. We don't have any chemicals in our cooling tower program with this symbol, but it's important that you guys are able to recognize it. Acute toxicity, irritant, dermal sensitizer, a little bit less severe but still harmful, has narcotic effects and respiratory tract irritation. That's this exclamation point, and we actually do see that on one of our chemicals, that isothiazolone Promax or GAX. Probably the most common pictogram in our cooling tower program is the corrosive pictogram. Causes skin corrosion, serious eye damage, and eye irritation. We also have our carcinogen pictogram. You can kind of see a systemic hazard going on here. We have a carcinogen, respiratory sensitizer, reproductive toxicity, organ toxicity, mutagenicity, and aspiration hazard. We don't currently have any chemicals in our cooling tower program with this pictogram. We have explosive, or we have flammables. Also important for you guys to recognize these pictograms. And then we have physical hazards. So corrosive to metals. So the symbol's the same. We have corrosive to humans, corrosive to us, serious eye damage, and then we have also corrosive to metals, gases under pressure, and oxidizers. So those signal words that I mentioned a little bit ago, there's two signal words. Danger indicates a more severe hazard, whereas warning is a less severe but still hazard nonetheless. Not all labels will have this signal word, and some chemicals are not even hazardous enough to require that a signal word appear on the label. Just a reminder of the different ways that chemicals can get into our system. Don't forget about inhaling or breathing it, ingesting or swallowing by handling a chemical, getting it on your skin or your hands, and then eating some food is a way that you could ingest a chemical. It can get absorbed through the skin, and it can also be injected. If you're handling a chemical in a piece of glassware and the glassware breaks and cuts your hand, that's a way to inject it into your system. So precautionary statements, which are on labels, it describes recommended measures. The most common ones, or some frequently observed ones, are to wear gloves, eye protection, wash with soap and water, store in a well-ventilated place. These are some common examples of precautionary statements that might be included on your labels. Safety data sheets. So MSDS, or material safety data sheets, have been transitioned over to safety data sheets, or SDS sheets. They are standardized into 16 section format. So the first aid section, for example, is always in section 4. You don't have to go searching through a safety data sheet. It's always in the same section. And employers have to ensure that safety data sheets are readily accessible to employees. So we have them in physical format at the cooling tower stations. They are distributed electronically to you as well. With this training, they should be, or I can distribute them electronically at your request if you have trouble accessing one. But you need to make sure that they are accessible. As an employer, you need to make sure that they're accessible to all employees. They provide you with the chemical and physical properties of your chemical, health and physical hazards, toxicity information, compatibility and incompatibility of the chemical, spill and fire response, personal protective equipment, and much more. Contact your supervisor for your SDS sheets for your workspace. So the first chemical that we're going to talk about is our bromine. It's either Stabrom 909 from Eldon, or it's Trexide 323 from DuBois. This is corrosive to skin and to metals. It is also toxic if inhaled and causes severe skin burns and eye damage. So you want to make sure that you are paying attention to the recommendations of handling this chemical and working around this chemical. Making sure that you have the right PPE to work with the chemical, and getting it if you don't have the right PPE. Next is our Promax 1.5, our GAX 26. This one is corrosive to skin and metals. It's also a skin sensitizer, which means that it can actually cause an allergic skin reaction the more you come into contact with it. So you might not notice a huge issue if you accidentally spill it on your skin the first time. You might think no big deal, but the more you actually come into contact with it, the more your body develops an allergic response to it. So you want to make sure that you eliminate any potential interaction with this chemical. So next is our Trexide 311. This is the chlorine or Halochlor replacement from DuBois. We don't have any more Halochlor left in the stock room, so you might be seeing these chemicals sooner rather than later at those 7 buildings that have chlorine already at them. This is again corrosive to skin and to metals, and you want to make sure that you are handling it properly and wearing recommended personal protective equipment when you are around it. Next is our Monitrol 2302. This is our low core replacement, so our scale and corrosion inhibitor. This is also corrosive to skin and to metals, so you want to make sure that you are taking proper precautions when dealing with it. Next we have our CW878L. This is our AquaClean or our biodispersant replacement. This one is the chemical that doesn't have any hazard statements, no signal words, no known significant effects or critical hazards, and no pictograms. But you still want to treat it like a chemical. You don't want to get it in your eyes. You don't want to drink it, and you want to avoid getting it on you or on your clothes. Still, I included our AquaClean ODP. We still have some out there on definitely on site at some of our locations, and we want to make sure that we are aware of the hazards. Just like the CW878L, it doesn't have any pictograms, hazard symbols, or signal words, but you still want to treat it with proper precaution as if it were chemical and not non-hazardous. So the PPE that I've been mentioning, you want to make sure you have at all of your stations: goggles, apron, gloves, some form of Tyvek suit to cover your clothes so that you can make sure that you aren't carrying chemical around with you where it can come into contact with you throughout the day. If you do not have these things at your location, please make sure you have them before you get ready to start your cooling tower from the stockroom. Okay, so if you have any questions about the cooling tower startup, please contact WSU Water Safety at eldonwater.com. Peter Miller will be fielding all questions that you guys have. If there's something that he can't answer, he will forward it to the proper person from the startup training to answer your question. And don't forget to send me an email to let me know that you completed this training. Stay safe, everybody. Let me know if you have any questions, and happy spring. Thanks.